existed anywhere and interacted with anyone in the past 15 years, you've understood the concept and idea of fake news. While the word itself is an oxymoron, it's easy to recognize that it is a growing issue, and that accurate information is becoming more and more difficult to find. But alongside that accurate information is what this editorial points to as a significant problem. When we look at today's editorial from the Nieman Foundation at Harvard, The Long, Slow Death of the Newspaper Editorial, it points to not only this lack of trust in the media, but also a lack of an authoritative voice that says, how dare you, in the form of newspaper editorials. So today, we'll look deeper into this claim and deeply understand the issue. Then look at the effects it's having on a large scale before finding some solutions that we can take to address this problem. So first, let's dive deeper into what this editorial is explaining and start to analyze the issue on a deeper level. First, we look at this idea of the loss of newspaper editorials. Once highly respected spaces of opinion that were critiquing not only the government, but also local systems are no longer nearly as popular or nearly as frequently published. This is a large issue, as because we see journalists who have the education and experience to critique this kind of thing simply aren't being given the platform to do so. Additionally, we see an issue with the editorials that are being still published, which is that they're no longer localized and are still looking towards national organizations like Congress or the president, and those are the places where they're critiquing, meaning we're losing that authoritative voice at the local level. But this is a large issue that continues to grow, and we'll look into what that effect means on the American people. First, we see that the rise of citizen journalism in the form of easy access to the internet has posed a greater threat to newspaper editorials and those stronger authoritative voices and educated voices. Because just anybody can publish their information online in the form of an opinion and put it out there as information that can be easily accessed across the world, we see growing interest in that kind of information and a lessening interest in correct journalism and educated and authoritative voice that was once the newspaper editorial. Further, we see a deeper distrust in the media. Because there is this growing distrust in the media, people who have specific allies to news outlets and a lack of alliance to any other news outlets, means that newspapers are more hesitant to publish this information because they're afraid of this fake news label, meaning that they can no longer publish these editorials or these opinions that publish important critiques to systems and governments and laws that are necessary and were once relied upon by readers. And finally, we can look towards the solutions that we can take to mitigate this issue and hope to bring back what once was the newspaper editorial. First and foremost, we need to take a look at this local issue. Increasing funding to local journalism means not only do we reduce this polarization that happens when we increase politics to that national level, but it also means that we have more intimate and accredited information of happenings at the local level, which is what this editorial points to multiple times, explaining that nationalization has only worsened this distrust in the media, because now everything is at a big scale. But really, things are happening every day at the local level that simply aren't being critiqued. And that is necessary if we want to continue to see a thrive or a bring back of that newspaper editorial. And further, we need to return to the authority and the respect that we once had for journalists and accredited and educated journalists. Because of this fear of the fake news label, we've seen newspapers step down. They've taken this as a label and a threat, meaning that they're reducing what their original intentions were, to create critiques on large systems, to bring back new information, and to increase that access to that information, which means that when they succumb to these problems and these critiques from the public, we're losing vital information and vital critiques that were once possible. In order to bring back the importance of the newspaper editorial, we need to take a step back. Newspapers need to take a stand, support their journalists on their staff, and recognize that the opinion articles and the editorial articles are just as important as those objective truth articles. So when we look at the state of news and the news environment today, it is clear to see that we have a growing issue, not only in trust in the media, but also in the kind of information that news outlets are publishing. When we look to today's editorial, The Long, Slow Death of the Newspaper Editorial from Nieman Foundation at Harvard, we can recognize this issue. First, we looked at this problem of the loss of editorials and the nationalized environment of those editorials. Then we looked at the effects not only on the American public, but also on the shrinking of newspapers in general, before finally looking to solutions in the form of funding to local journalists and the prioritization of that education and accreditation.